Captain Jiho walked slowly into the massive council chamber, his old boots echoing on the polished floor. The weight of what he had to say pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. Around him, hundreds of alien beings from across the galaxy filled the curved seats, their strange forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes under the bright lights. He stopped at the center podium and activated the holographic display with a simple touch. The three-dimensional star map bloomed to life above his head, showing thousands of star systems connected by glowing trade routes. But one world stood out, like a drop of blood, against the darkness. Kepler 4422c pulsed with angry red warning signals, surrounded by a ring of beacon satellites that had been broadcasting the same message for over 300 years. "Look at this world," Jiho said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "See those warning beacons? They were put there by our ancestors for a very good reason." He paused, letting his eyes sweep across the alien faces watching him. Some looked bored, others seemed annoyed that their time was being wasted. 3 centuries ago, a civilization called the Ancients lived across this part of the galaxy. They were powerful, maybe more advanced than any of us sitting here today. They built cities that could float in space, created technology we still don't understand, and their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds. Jiho's weathered face grew more serious as he continued. Then, in less than a year, they were all dead, every single one of them. The holographic display shifted to show ancient ruins on dead planets, empty cities where grass grew through broken streets, and ships drifting silent through space with no one left alive to pilot them. Our research teams have spent decades studying what happened to them. We found the answer buried deep in the crust of Kepler 442c. There's a plague down there sleeping in the rock and soil. It's not like any disease we know today. This thing was designed to kill, and it's very, very good at its job. Dr. Heian had sent him detailed reports from the research station orbiting the Forbidden World. Her instruments could detect the viral signatures even through miles of solid rock. The pathogen was still active, still waiting, preserved in some kind of biological stasis that human science barely understood. "The plague adapts," Jiho explained, his voice growing harder. "It learns. From each species it encounters, becomes stronger, more deadly. What killed the ancients is still down there, and if anyone disturbs that world, if anyone starts digging into its surface, they will release something that could destroy us all." The first interruption came from the Veltari section. Korthus rose from his crystalline seat, his geometric body catching the light like a living diamond. "Captain Jiho, with respect, your species has always been cautious, perhaps too cautious. The mineral surveys show that Kepler 442c contains the largest deposits of rare isotopes ever discovered. These materials could power our civilizations for centuries." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Mecron delegation, insect-like beings with gleaming carapaces, clicked their mandibles in what Jiho knew was their version of applause. The Geldai representatives, tall and graceful with their flowing robes, nodded their elongated heads in approval. "You speak of ancient plagues and dead civilizations," continued Korthus, "but where is your proof? Old ruins and empty worlds prove nothing. Perhaps the ancients simply destroyed themselves through war or accident. Perhaps this plague you fear so much died out long ago." Other voices joined in. "Humans always see monsters in the shadows," called out a Mecron speaker. "Your paranoia has cost the galaxy profits before. Remember the Vega incident? You claimed that system was dangerous, but our mining operations there have been profitable for 50 years. "This is different," Jiho said firmly, but he could see he was losing them. The promise of wealth was too strong, the threat too distant and unclear. "The isotopes aren't worth the risk. There are other sources, safer sources." A Geldai administrator stood up, her voice musical but cold. "Perhaps the humans wish to claim these riches for themselves. Is this why you spread fear about dangers? That may not even exist." The accusation hit the chamber like a lightning bolt. Suddenly, every alien eye was focused on Jiho with suspicion. He had expected this, but it still stung. After all the times humanity had shared their discoveries, all the warnings they had given that had saved lives, they were still seen as selfish and scheming. "We want nothing from that world," Jiho said quietly. "We're trying to save your lives." "But The damage was done. The vote was taken within the hour. The Galactic Council officially rejected the human warning by a margin of 7-1. Mining rights to Kepler 442c were awarded to a joint venture between the Veltari Crystalline Consortium, the Mecron Deep Mining Guild, and Geldai Resource Management. 3 weeks later, Dr. Hyan stood in the observation deck of the Human Research Station, watching through the transparent aluminum windows as alien ships filled the space around the Forbidden World. The mining fleets were massive, each vessel the size of a small city, equipped with the most advanced extraction equipment money could buy. "They're not even bothering with safety protocols," she told her assistant Minho as they watched the first deep-core extractors descend toward the planet's surface. "Look at those drilling patterns. They're going straight for the richest deposits right through the areas our surveys marked as most dangerous." Minho, a young researcher who had joined her team fresh from the academy, shook his head in disbelief. "Do they really think we would lie about something like this?" "They think we're either lying or wrong," Hyun replied sadly. "Either way, they're about to find out the truth." Her instruments began screaming warnings as the first extractor broke through into the deep mineral layers. Ancient rock that had been sealed for millennia cracked open like an egg, releasing clouds of microscopic death into the thin atmosphere. The pathogen detectors went crazy, their displays showing viral loads that should have been impossible. Hyun's hands moved quickly across her control panel, activating every scanner and recording device the station had. If humanity was going to have to clean up this mess, they would need every piece of data she could gather. "Send a priority message to Admiral Taijin," she ordered Minho, her voice calm despite the disaster unfolding before their eyes. "Tell him, the Pandora Protocol is now active. The box has been opened, and what's inside is exactly as terrible as we warned them it would be." As the last mining ship disappeared into the planet's atmosphere, Hyan allowed herself one moment of sadness for what was about to happen. Then she got back to work. There would be time for grief later. Right now she had a galaxy to help save from its own greed and stupidity. Commander Unji was drinking her morning coffee when the first emergency signal cut through the peaceful quiet of the monitoring station. She had been watching the alien mining operations for 3 days now, documenting their every move from aboard the human vessel, Soul's Pride. The ship hung in space like a silent guardian, far enough away to avoid detection, but close enough to see everything happening around the cursed planet below. The distress call came through crackling with static and fear. Yunji nearly dropped, her cup as the desperate voice of a Veltari mining supervisor filled the bridge. These crystalline beings normally spoke in musical tones, their voices like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But this voice was different, broken and filled with terror. "Help us, please help us," the alien pleaded through the speakers. "Something is wrong with my crew. They're falling apart. Their bodies are dissolving from the inside out." Lieutenant Daehyun looked up from his communication station, his young face pale with shock. "Commander, I'm picking up 17 more platforms sending similar signals. They're all requesting immediate evacuation." Yunji set down her coffee and moved to the main display screen. The tactical view showed the mining operations spread across Kepler 442c like a metal infection. Dozens of massive platforms floated in orbit around the planet, connected by streams of transport ships carrying precious minerals up from the surface. But now, red warning lights were beginning to flash on platform after platform. "Put the first signal back on speakers," she ordered. The Veltari supervisor's voice returned, weaker now and filled with a strange crackling sound. "My second officer just crumbled. His crystalline structure is breaking down at the molecular level. We can see the cracks spreading through his body like spider webs, and it's spreading to others. Whatever we brought up from that planet, it's killing us." Before Yunji could respond, Lieutenant Daehyun was waving frantically from his station. "More signals coming in, Commander. The Mecron deep mining vessel, Krathmore, is reporting similar symptoms. Their crew's exoskeletons are melting off their bodies, and the Geldai processing station, their message just cut off mid-transmission." Dr. Soman rushed onto the bridge, her medical scanner already in hand and her face grim with determination. As the fleet's chief medical officer, she had been monitoring the biological readings from a safe distance ever since the mining began. What she was seeing on her instruments defied everything she knew about disease and infection. "This pathogen is unlike anything in our databases," she reported, her voice steady despite the horror of what she was describing. "It's not just adapting to each species it encounters. It's learning from them, studying their biology, and then redesigning itself to be the perfect killer for that particular life form." She pulled up her readings on the main screen, showing complex biological data that painted a terrifying picture. "Look at these mutation rates. The version attacking the Veltari crystalline structure is completely different from the strain affecting the Mecron insectoids, and both are different from what's killing the Geldai. It's like the plague can split itself into multiple specialized weapons." Yunji stared at the data, her military training helping her understand the implications immediately. "How fast is it spreading?" "Faster than should be possible," Dr. Somin replied, adjusting her scanner settings to get clearer readings. The ancients' records suggested their civilization took months to fall completely. But this is happening in days. Each species' immune system is actually making it worse. Every time their bodies try to fight the infection, the plague learns more about how to kill them. The bridge fell silent, except for the constant stream of distress calls flooding their communication channels. Alien voices in dozens of different languages all saying the same thing: "Help us, save us, we're dying." Lieutenant Daehyun's fingers flew over his controls as he tried to make sense of the chaos. "Commander, the mining fleets are starting to evacuate. I count 47 vessels breaking orbit and heading for the jump points." "Too late," Yunji said grimly, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "They're already infected. Every ship that leaves that planet is going to carry the plague with them." As if to prove her point, one of the fleeing Mecron cargo haulers suddenly stopped transmitting. Its lights went dark, and it began drifting powerlessly through space. Just another tomb ship joining the growing collection of dead vessels around Kepler 442c. Dr. Somin watched her medical scanners track the escaping ships, each one showing the telltale signs of active infection. They're heading straight for their home systems. If even one of those ships makes it to a populated world— She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge understood what that meant. The plague that had wiped out the ancients was about to be unleashed on the modern galaxy, carried by the very beings who had refused to listen to humanity's warnings. "Get me Admiral Tajan," Yunji commanded, her voice carrying the weight of command despite the fear in her heart. "Priority Alpha transmission. Tell him we have a code. Black biological emergency, and we need the fleet here now." Within minutes, the Admiral's weathered face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Yunji could see the bustling activity of a warship's command center. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for something they had all hoped would never happen. "Report, Commander," Admiral Tajan said simply. "Sir, the situation is exactly as bad as we predicted. The plague is active, adapting, and spreading faster than our worst-case scenarios. The alien mining fleets are evacuating, but they're taking the infection with them. We have contaminated vessels heading toward at least 12 major star systems." The Admiral nodded slowly, his expression never changing. Behind his calm exterior, Yunji knew he was calculating distances, travel times, and the resources needed for what was about to become the largest containment operation in galactic history. "Commander Yunji, you and your crew are to maintain safe distance and continue monitoring. Document everything. If we're going to stop this thing, we need to understand exactly how it works." He paused, his eyes growing harder. "And send a flash. Message to Earth Command. Tell them the Pandora Protocol is now fully active." Yunji felt a chill run down her spine. The Pandora Protocol was humanity's most classified emergency plan, designed for exactly this scenario. It meant that human ships across the galaxy were about to begin the largest hunt in history, tracking down every infected vessel before the plague could reach populated worlds. "Sir, what about the aliens still trapped on the mining platforms?" Admiral Tajan's expression softened for just a moment. "We'll try to save who we can, Commander, but our first priority is preventing this from becoming a galaxy-wide extinction event. The living come first." As the transmission ended, Yunji looked back at her screens showing the chaos around Kepler 442c. Dozens of ships were fleeing in panic, carrying death with them into the stars. And somewhere in the darkness, Human vessels were already moving. To intercept them, the hunt had begun. Space itself seemed to tear open as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace with mechanical precision. 60 warships materialized in perfect formation, their black hulls drinking in the starlight like hungry shadows. These weren't the exploration vessels or peaceful trading ships that other species were used to seeing from humanity. These were hunter-killers, built in secret shipyards and designed for one purpose only. Captain Young-Soo stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, Busan's Vengeance, watching his tactical display fill with red target markers. Each marker represented a contaminated alien ship, fleeing toward populated systems, carrying death in their cargo holds and crew quarters. His ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, bristling with containment technology that had been developed in the deepest levels of human research facilities. "Target acquired, Captain," Lieutenant Nari called out from her sensor station. Her fingers danced across holographic controls as she locked onto their first prey. "Macron, heavy freighter," Kethmara bearing 27 Mark IV. Distance 47 light minutes and increasing. "They're running hard for the Macron home system." Young-Soo studied the tactical readout. The freighter was a massive beast of a ship, designed to haul millions of tons of raw materials across interstellar distances. Under normal circumstances, it would take his pursuit vessel nearly 3 days to catch up to it, using conventional drives. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Communications. Have we received any response to our cease and desist orders?" The communications officer, a young man named Hajin, shook his head grimly. "Negative, Captain. We've sent 3 separate transmissions demanding they stop and prepare to be boarded. No response on any frequency." Through the main view screen, Young-Soo could see the distant spark of the fleeing freighter's engines. Somewhere aboard that ship, Macron crew members were either already dead or dying horribly as the ancient plague consumed them from the inside out. The lucky ones had died quickly. The unlucky ones were probably still alive, watching their exoskeletons crack and split as their bodies betrayed them. "Sir," Lieutenant Nari continued, "long-range scanners are detecting massive biological contamination aboard the target vessel. The pathogen readings are off the charts. If that ship reaches the Macron colonies," she didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge knew exactly what would happen. The plague would spread like wildfire through the insectoid population. Centers, adapting and evolving with each new victim, until an entire civilization was nothing but empty cities and drifting corpses. "Helm, prepare for quantum entanglement jump," Young-Soo ordered calmly. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their hands flying over controls that represented technology the alien species had never even dreamed of. For decades, humanity had allowed other civilizations to believe they were just another spacefaring race, content to trade and explore like everyone else. But in the hidden research facilities of Earth and her colonies, human scientists had been pushing the boundaries of physics itself. Chief Engineer Jiwon's voice crackled through the intercom from the engine room. "Quantum entanglement drive online, Captain. Coordinates locked and verified. Ready for instantaneous translation on your mark." Young-Soo felt the familiar tingle in his bones as the ship's exotic matter generators spun up to full power. The quantum entanglement drive was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a technology that made the fastest alien ships look like children's toys. Instead of pushing through normal space, it created a temporary connection between 2 points in space-time, allowing a vessel to step from one location to another as easily as walking through a doorway. "Execute jump," he commanded. Reality twisted around the Busan's Vengeance for just a moment, space folding in on itself in ways that hurt to think about. Then, between one heartbeat and the next, the pursuit ship materialized directly alongside the fleeing Macron freighter. The effect on the alien crew must have been terrifying. One moment they were alone in the vast emptiness of space, racing desperately toward home. The next moment, a predator had appeared beside them as if by magic, close enough to see through their viewports. And what Young-Soo saw through those viewports made his stomach turn. Macron bodies floated in the corridors, their chitinous shells split open like cracked eggs. The insectoid aliens had tried to seal themselves in emergency compartments, but the plague had found them anyway. Some were still moving weakly, their compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting as they died by inches. Sealing field deployed, Chief Engineer Jiwon reported from her station. Target vessel is completely contained within our containment bubble. They can't jump to hyperspace, and nothing can get in or out without our permission. The containment field was another piece of human technology that the aliens had never suspected. It created a pocket of folded space-time around a target vessel, effectively trapping it in a cage made of physics itself. The Mechron freighter was now as helpless as a fish in a net. Across 12 different star systems, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships were appearing beside fleeing alien vessels, like ghosts materializing from the void. Ships that should have been safe in hyperspace found themselves yanked back into normal space by gravity anchors that twisted the laws of physics. Vessels that tried to hide in asteroid fields were found by sensors that could track a single molecule of contaminated air across light years of space. The aliens who had dismissed humanity as paranoid and primitive were learning a harsh lesson about underestimating their warnings. Every human ship moved with purpose and precision, their crews trained for this exact scenario. There was no panic, no hesitation, no mercy for those who continued to run. Dr. Ki-hyun led the boarding teams. From the Busan's Vengeance, his bulky hazmat suit reflecting the harsh lights of the Mechron freighter's corridors. The suit was a marvel of human engineering, equipped with its own life support, medical scanners, and enough protection to let him walk through a plague zone as safely as if he were in his own laboratory. Sweep complete, he reported through his suit's communication system. I count 43 Mechron crew members total. 31 are confirmed dead, 8 are dying and beyond help. 4 might survive if we can get them to medical containment immediately. His team moved through the ship with clinical efficiency, their training taking over as they sorted the living from the dead. Survivors who could be saved were carefully transferred to specially designed quarantine pods. Biological samples were collected from the deceased for analysis. Everything else was marked for incineration. Any crew members who are still conscious? Young-soo asked through the communication link. 2, Captain. Both are delirious with fever, but they keep saying the same thing over and over. They're begging us not to let them go home. They know what they're carrying, and they're terrified of what it would do to their families. It was a small mercy, Young-soo thought. At least some of the alien crews understood the horror they were carrying. But understanding didn't change the situation. Every contaminated ship had to be stopped, every infected crew member had to be contained, and every trace of the ancient plague had to be eliminated before it could spread further. The hunt continued across the galaxy, methodical and relentless. Human ships appeared where they were needed, when they were needed, using technology that seemed like magic to the species who had underestimated them for so long. And with each captured vessel, with each contained outbreak, humanity proved that their warnings hadn't been paranoia, they had been preparation. The aliens were finally learning the difference, but for many of them, the lesson was coming far too late. The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked nothing like the confident gathering that had dismissed humanity's warnings just 3 weeks earlier. Gone were the comfortable debates and casual dismissals. The great chamber that had once echoed with alien voices discussing trade profits and mining rights now felt like a courtroom where the defendants were waiting to hear their sentence. Ambassador? Yuna walked into the chamber with slow, measured steps. Her simple human uniform stood out starkly against the elaborate robes and ceremonial dress of the alien delegates. But there was something in her posture, something in the way she carried herself, that made every being in that room understand that the balance of power had shifted completely. She didn't ask for permission to speak. She didn't wait for the ceremonial introduction or follow the ancient protocols that governed council meetings. Instead, she simply walked to the center podium and began speaking in a clear, calm voice that somehow carried more authority than all the shouting and demands the aliens had used against humanity for years. The containment operation is complete, she announced, her words falling into the silence like stones into still water. Every ship, every station, every colony that had any contact with Kepler 442c will now submit to immediate quarantine. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is how things are going to be. The Veltari Prime Minister, Kolmesh, shifted nervously in his crystalline seat. 3 weeks ago he had been one of the loudest voices mocking human paranoia. Now his once brilliant form seemed dulled and grey, like a diamond that had lost its fire. The plague had already claimed 2 of his closest advisors and 17 mining platform crews from his territory. "Ambassador Yuna," he said, his voice cracking with stress, "surely we can discuss reasonable terms. Your species cannot seriously intend to hold entire star systems hostage over what might be excessive precautions." "The Geldai Third Fleet tried to run our blockade yesterday," Commander J1 interrupted, his voice cutting through the Prime Minister's words like a blade. He activated a holographic display that filled the air above the council chamber with tactical footage from the previous day's action. The assembled delegates watched in horrified silence as human warships intercepted a fleeing Geldai naval formation. The alien vessels were sleek and graceful, built for speed and elegance rather than war. They had tried to break through the human quarantine line using their superior numbers and faster engines. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 47 seconds. Human ships appeared from nowhere, materializing around the fleeing fleet like hunters surrounding cornered prey. Weapons that the aliens had never seen before tore through shields and armor as if they were made of paper. 14 Geldai vessels were reduced to glowing vapor before their crews even understood what was happening to them. "The survivors are now in containment," Commander J1 continued matter-of-factly. "Their crews are receiving medical treatment, and their ships are being decontaminated. They will be released when it's safe to do so." What the aliens hadn't understood, what they were only now beginning to grasp, was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for generations. While other species had focused on trade, expansion, and the comfortable assumption that the galaxy was a safe place, humans had been studying every dead world, every extinct civilization, every mysterious plague that had swept through the stars. The species that other races had dismissed as paranoid and primitive had actually been building the most comprehensive biological defense network in galactic history. Hidden research stations monitored every ancient ruin. Secret laboratories developed containment protocols for diseases that didn't even exist yet. Military shipyards constructed vessels designed specifically for quarantine operations. Admiral Tajan's weathered face appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from his flagship, somewhere in the depths of space. Behind him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency at their stations, monitoring the vast network of human ships that now surrounded 47 star systems. "Status report, Admiral," Yuna requested. "We've successfully contained the outbreak to 47 systems across 12 sectors," Tajun reported, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a job well done. "Our containment fields are holding steady, and our deep space monitoring stations show zero sign of infection beyond the quarantine perimeters. The plague hasn't reached a single core world." Dr. Heejin stepped forward from her position near the back of the chamber. As humanity's chief xenobiologist, she had spent the last 3 weeks studying every sample of the ancient pathogen that human teams had recovered. Her research had revealed both terrifying capabilities and crucial weaknesses in the plague that had destroyed the ancients. "The pathogen is indeed as dangerous as we warned," she explained to the stunned council, "but it has limitations. In a sealed environment, without new hosts to adapt to, it has a maximum viable lifespan of approximately 6 months. Our containment fields can maintain perfect integrity for over 2 years." She activated her own holographic display, showing complex biological data that painted a picture of the plague's life cycle. "We simply wait it out. The pathogen will exhaust its evolutionary potential and die naturally. No need for dangerous countermeasures or experimental treatments that might make things worse." The Mecron representative, a scarred veteran of numerous trade wars, raised one of his chitinous arms. "And if we refuse to accept your protection? What if some of us decide we don't want human oversight of our territories?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, but there was no real defiance behind it. Everyone in the chamber had seen the tactical footage. Everyone knew about the fleets of human ships that had appeared as if from nowhere, using technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Yuna's smile was as cold and distant as the space between stars. Then you join the ancients in extinction. The simple statement carried more weight than all the threats and ultimatums that had ever been issued in the council chamber. There was no anger in her voice, no emotion at all. She was simply stating a fact, like commenting on the weather or the time of day. You see, she continued, we tried to warn you. We tried to explain the danger. We offered to share our research, our containment protocols, our experience with ancient plague sites. You called us paranoid. You accused us of protectionism. You decided that our centuries of careful study were less important than your quarterly profit reports. She gestured toward the tactical displays still floating in the air around them. This is the result of ignoring human warnings. Your people are dead or dying. Your fleets are contained, your colonies are under quarantine, and the only reason your entire civilizations haven't been wiped out is because we were prepared for your foolishness. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the true scope of human preparation. While they had been focused on immediate gains and political maneuvering, humanity had been thinking in terms of centuries and civilizations. While they had seen paranoia, humans had been displaying the kind of long-term planning that kept entire species alive. The quarantine will remain in place until every trace of the pathogen is eliminated, Yuna concluded. Human ships will monitor the affected systems. Human medical teams will provide treatment to survivors. Human technology will ensure that this plague dies with this generation, just like it should have died with the ancients. She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the faces of the alien leadership. And when this is over, when your people are safe and your worlds are clean, maybe you'll remember this lesson the next time humanity issues a warning about dangers you don't understand. The reckoning was complete. The species that had ignored human wisdom were now dependent on human protection. And in the depths of space, the ancient plague that had destroyed one galactic civilization was finally meeting its match in the patient, methodical preparations of another. The galaxy would survive, but it would never again underestimate the Pui, humans who had saved it. 6 months had passed since the first mining platform sent its desperate distress call from Kepler 442c. The quarantine zones that had once pulsed with angry red warning lights on tactical displays now showed the steady, green glow of cleared space. The ancient plague that had threatened to consume 3 civilizations was finally officially extinct. Captain Sunho stood on the observation deck of what had once been the Veltari mining platform, Crystal Harvest. The massive structure had been completely transformed over the past months, its mining equipment stripped away, and replaced with the most advanced research laboratories humanity had ever built. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see human decontamination crews working methodically on the hull, their white hazmat suits moving like tiny stars against the black metal surface. "The irony isn't lost on me," he remarked to Lieutenant Bo-young, his science officer, who had become something of a philosopher during the long months of containment work. They came here hunting for rare isotopes and found death waiting for them in the rocks. We came here to stop that death from spreading, and we ended up making the greatest scientific discovery in galactic history. Bo-young nodded, her eyes focused on the research data scrolling across her portable display. The plague samples they had recovered and studied in absolute safety had revealed secrets that the ancient civilization had taken to their graves. Biotechnology that could regenerate lost limbs, genetic therapies that could extend lifespans by centuries, and medical techniques that made cancer and genetic diseases things of the past. The ancients weren't just victims of this plague, she observed, highlighting specific sections of genetic code on her screen. They created it. This was their ultimate biological weapon, designed to adapt to any life form it encountered. They probably meant to use it against their enemies, but it turned on them instead. The transformation of the mining platform into a research station was just one small part of the massive changes that had swept across the galaxy in the wake of the crisis. But perhaps the most significant change wasn't technological or medical. It was political. On Earth's orbital station, now officially designated as the new seat of interstellar government, Ambassador Yuna stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The chamber looked very different from the one where human warnings had been dismissed 6 months earlier. Gone were the elaborate ceremonial decorations and species-specific seating arrangements. Instead, the room was designed for efficiency and clear communication, with human technology ensuring that every word was translated perfectly and every delegate could see and hear everything clearly. The quarantine protocols are now permanent. Galactic law, Una announced to the assembled representatives. Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had saved an entire galaxy and knew it. No species may approach any designated plague world, ancient ruin site, or extinction zone without explicit human authorization and direct human supervision. She gestured to the massive holographic display that showed the galaxy map, now dotted with thousands of yellow warning markers around worlds that human research had identified as potentially dangerous. We have catalogued over 3,000 sites that show signs of ancient presence or biological contamination. Each one is now under continuous human monitoring. The alien delegates listened in complete silence. The Veltari representative, one of the few survivors from the original council, nodded respectfully. The new Mecron speaker kept his head bowed, in what his species considered a gesture of profound respect. Even the proud Geldi ambassador, whose people had lost an entire fleet trying to run the human blockade, offered no objections. They had all seen what happened to those who ignored human warnings. More importantly, they had seen what happened to those who heeded them. In his private quarters aboard the flagship Terra's Shield, Admiral Tajan reviewed the final casualty reports from the 6-month crisis. The numbers made for sobering reading, but they also told a story of preparation meeting catastrophe and winning through careful planning rather than luck. 43 billion alien deaths across 12 star systems. Entire colonies wiped out before human containment teams could reach them. 3 species brought to the edge of extinction because they had valued short-term profits over long-term survival. But in the human column of the casualty report, the number remained stubbornly, proudly 0. Not a single human life lost to the plague. Not one infection among the thousands of crew members who had worked in contaminated areas. Not even a serious injury during the most dangerous phase of the containment operation. The difference wasn't luck or some kind of genetic immunity. Humans were just as vulnerable to the plague as any other species. The difference was preparation, patience, and the willingness to take action when others would not. His aide, Commander Minji, entered the quarters carrying a datapad with the latest intelligence reports. Sir, our long-range sensor arrays have detected another ancient ruin system in the Kepler 438 sector. The xenoarchaeology teams are requesting permission to begin preliminary surveys. Tajan didn't even look up from his casualty reports. Permission denied. Establish a full perimeter around the system and begin standard containment procedures, and send word to the Council that humanity will be handling this investigation alone. Minji nodded and made notes on her pad. Should I inform the alien governments about the discovery, sir? Eventually, Taejun replied, finally setting aside his reports. After we've studied it thoroughly, identified all potential dangers, and developed appropriate safety protocols, the galaxy has learned its lesson about rushing into ancient sites unprepared, and the galaxy had indeed learned its lesson. Across hundreds of worlds, alien children were now taught about the importance of heeding human warnings. Universities offered courses in human risk assessment methodology. Military academies studied the containment operation as an example of perfect planning and execution. But perhaps most importantly, the automated monitoring stations that humanity had secretly built over the past centuries were no longer secret. Thousands of unmanned platforms drifted through space, watching over dead worlds and ancient ruins, their sensors constantly scanning for signs of danger. Each station was equipped with quantum communication arrays that could alert human command centers instantly if anything changed. The hunt for ancient dangers never truly ended. It simply evolved, becoming a permanent part of galactic civilization under human guidance. In the depths of space, far from any inhabited system, one of these monitoring stations detected unusual energy readings from a moon that had been dead for millions of years. Within seconds, the alert was transmitted across the galaxy to human command centers. Within hours, human ships were moving to investigate. The aliens who had once mocked human paranoia now slept peacefully in their beds, protected by that same watchful vigilance they had tried so hard to dismiss. And in the darkest corners of the galaxy, where ancient horrors waited in forgotten tombs and sleeping plagues dreamed of new civilizations to consume, humanity kept its patient, methodical, and utterly unforgiving watch. The galaxy was safe, not because the dangers had disappeared, but because someone was finally paying attention to them. Someone who understood that the price of civilization was eternal vigilance, and that sometimes the most important battles were fought not with weapons, but with preparation, wisdom, and the courage to act when others would not. The humans had become the galaxy's guardians, whether the galaxy wanted them to be or not. And deep in the ruins of Kepler 442c, where mining equipment still lay scattered and abandoned, the wind that didn't exist in the vacuum of space seemed to whisper a warning that would echo through the ages. Listen to the humans, they know what they're talking about.